Okay, so this one's on performing vulnerability management. Let's see what we have to do. I'm going to read the scenario here. Medium-sized business runs a Windows Server network for their business operations. Due to some setbacks and budget cuts, the business has not had any form of IT support for over a year. On the mend, the business is looking to advance in all areas of operations. Due to the lack of server maintenance, the company calls you in as IT expert to harden a server. As the first task, you run a vulnerability scan against the server that acts as the main controller. You must consider the provided details along with scan results to make hardening recommendations. Finally, you must provide rationale or reasoning for your recommendations. Okay. Details: the main server is Windows Server 2016, configured as Active Directory domain controller. Users complain of sluggish server response and occasional server reboots in the middle of the day. That's unusual. Windows updates are important yet should not be intrusive. There is no need for an approval process. Okay, there's no change management process. The scan automatically provides a score X for critical, exclamation point for intermediate, and K for passing vulnerability results. Okay. Okay, and here's the scans, I guess. X is passing. Score of X. No, X is critical. X is critical. X accounts. There are 2 accounts with administrative access. Okay. They made more critical. Auto logon configured for some accounts. Not ideal. All right. K for passing. Updates are automatically downloaded and applied. Everyone group has no more than read access to some folders. Okay. And then anonymous access is not restricted. Server updates server is running properly. Okay. Our server updates server. Yeah. All right. That's Windows Server Update Server. WSS. All right. And then K. I or percent. Not percent. Exclamation point for intermediate. Windows Firewall enabled with custom exceptions configured. Got it. Windows Firewall enabled, but not on all connections. Okay. All right. So it's an interesting one. We got that. And then what do we have here? Windows Server Infrastructure Recommendations, category, updates accounts firewall, recommendation, rationale. Okay, so we're making recommendations, hardening recommendations. Okay. This is going to take a lot of the things from the scenario, but I imagine we're going to have to do some intuitive thinking also. So this one seems like a mix between one of those logic puzzle type questions and a regular question. I kind of like this one. All right, let's see. Windows Server Update Services. Okay. All right, so we have to think about what they want here. Now, they said people are complaining about the server being sluggish and rebooting throughout the day. And the updates are automatic, so probably when the updates are pushed out, they get applied and then the server restarts automatically. So that's probably what's going on. So we could keep that the way it is, but if users are complaining, do we want to address that? I imagine they wouldn't say that. They wouldn't say the users are complaining unless they want us to address that. So we do want to address that. Where do they say that? Yeah, users complain of sluggish server response and occasional server reboots in the middle of the day. So that's not ideal. That's disruptive to the business process. So I think what we would do is we could just disable, I think we would remove it. Remove this service, and that's to help, just no disruptions to business processes. Okay, it's not an option here. Disable updates. We don't want to do that. Update and reboots via WSS. That's this. So we're not doing that. Updates handled via internet and updates scheduled by WSS. Well, the only one that makes sense because, if we're removing WSS, we can't use it. Would be updates handled via internet because we don't want to disable updates. Okay, automatic updates. Okay, so that was just for Windows Server Update Services. Now this is for automatic updates. Got it. So we would want to schedule these out probably. So schedule updates. Well, we'd also, okay, so we'd want to schedule reboots too to apply the updates. So we'd probably want to schedule both. So I'd say schedule updates and reboots. I gotta make my streaming window bigger. Sorry. There we go. I think it's going to be scheduling updates and reboots. You just passed, just reading the chat here, you just passed your exam on the first attempt. Hey, congratulations. I'm glad you passed your exam. Congratulations. What's your next certification? It's always good to go after one right after getting the last one, because then you keep yourself in that study mindset. But great job. I'm glad the videos are helpful for you. Okay. Automatic updates, schedule updates and reboots. Our rationale here, we want to avoid disruptions to the business because we want to manage our updates. This makes sense. Managed updates approach. Okay. Now, we could say aggressive update approach if we want to apply updates immediately, but we don't want to do that. They seem pretty relaxed about this. If they were applying automatic updates, you could argue that they were doing an aggressive update approach, but I think they were just doing automatic updates because they didn't have IT staff. So we'd want to do managed update approach. All right, administrator access. They said they had 2 administrator accounts, so we would want to restrict that down to a single account here, especially for a smaller company like this. So I'd say restrict to single account. That makes sense. We don't want to remove admin roles. We need admin roles. Restrict to a single account. I think that makes sense. And we want to do that. I'm going to try and guess at what the rationale is going to say ahead of time. I think that would be, just to improve overall security posture, reduce attack plane, one of those. Maintain a backup account. That's not correct. Tighten security. Utilize multiple sysadmins. I'd just say tighten security. Yeah. Now this is interesting because the rationale, the selections here kind of have to apply to all of these possible recommendations. So these are really different. Like this one talks about WSIS, but if we're removing the service, then we can immediately, take that out. So I think it's good to approach this question by picking the recommendation first and then look at the rationale, because you've automatically narrowed down some of the answers. Okay, anonymous access. There was anonymous access, right? There had to be, or they won't be talking about it. I think it's in here. Anonymous access not restricted. Okay, and that was a fine result, passing vulnerability assault. Okay. We want to have authentication. We want to maintain that audit trail. You can't do that if you have anonymous access. So we'd want to, now anonymous access could be enabled as part of ISS or IIS, Internet Information Services. So I think that might be why we're seeing that here. They're mentioning that here, or that could be a red herring. We'd probably want to remove we want to remove the accounts that have anonymous access. So I think this makes sense. Even though it didn't mention IIS in here, I think this makes sense, and that's something we have to intuit from this scenario. So remove ISS and remove account. And then that's going to be to provide for that audit trail. So that should say something about audit trail. Account used occasionally. It's not right. Only authenticated users allowed. I mean, that's partially correct. Service account not required. It doesn't really apply here. Service not always running. I don't think that really applies either. This is the best answer here, I think. Only authenticated users run, and the next step to that would be because we want to ensure we have that auditing. Okay, auto login. There was auto login, wasn't there? Let's see. Was there? Let's take a look. This is a lot to take in this question. Auto login. Oh yeah, auto login configured for some accounts. Now this one's critical, apparently. Okay, critical. So we don't want auto login. We would disable that. So obviously we want to remove that. Okay, we would disable that. but we wouldn't disable that using account management. We wouldn't control that in Active Directory. This would be a registry setting, wouldn't it? Control panel. Oh, wait, here's registry. I think it says registry. You would have a registry setting to disable auto logging because that would apply to all accounts. You wouldn't control that with Active Directory. And then the rationale for that, we want to maintain that audit trail. So ease of use, that's not right. Management use only. You don't want your managers logging onto your server unless they're really smart. Most managers in your company aren't going to be the type of people you want to log onto your server. All right. Overall security risk. I mean, that's partially right. Secure to admins. I don't know what that means. Username and password required. I guess security risk. I would say this is more having to do with maintaining non-repudiation. I'm surprised they didn't throw that term in here. I think that's the most correct answer, unless I'm misinterpreting this. All right, everyone group. So it said that the everyone group had read access. I remember that. You shouldn't really have an everyone group. We should have group roles for each person. So we want to... We don't want to add permissions to this group. We could disable group object permissions. Remove the everyone group. Possibly. Replace with authenticated users. The everyone group would catch everybody regardless of if they were authenticated or not. I mean, we could disable the permissions in the group, but we'd still have the group there. These are both saying kind of the same thing. This is going one step further, though. Because this kind of assumes we would remove the group, I think. I mean, it does say replace. So if it says replace, we would be removing the group. And I think we do need to remove the group. So I think it's either this one or this one. I think this is going to make the most sense. If this implies that we're removing the group. So I'm going to go with this one. And then access for users with credentials. We do want to track users with credentials. Ease of access for all. That's not our concern here. Objects are not sensitive. That doesn't apply. Use restrictive. Uses restrictive access. I think we want to stick with the credentials. We have a theme here. You know, if we're replacing this with authenticated users, then we want to have access for users with credentials, which would be our authenticated users. It's interesting because some of these drop-downs would only apply if you picked maybe one of the red herrings on the first recommendation. So it's like you have like red herring exception here. You got red herrings in red herrings. Anyway, all right. This is an interesting question. I kind of like this question. Category firewall. Custom exceptions. We had custom exceptions, right? Didn't we have some? Yeah. Firewall enabled, but not on all connections. Okay, well, we want to fix that. And is that a critical for the exclamation point? No, that's intermediate. This is a very confusing scale. What? Everyone group, firewall. Okay, firewall enabled with custom exceptions configured. I don't know why they didn't sort this in some way. Like this is sorted. Who sorted this? It's not sorted by score, and it's not sorted by category, or by like the thing it's looking at. Because you got firewall here, then you got firewall down here. I mean, I feel like it's purposely confusing. It's, you know, normally your results would be scored by their criticality, but they're not here. I don't know makes it just wastes time. I mean, some of the questions are designed just to waste your time like this. So this is what we have to deal with. Okay, firewall, Windows Firewall enabled with custom exceptions configured. Okay, so we do have some exceptions. It just said custom exceptions configured. Customs exceptions. we want to probably take a look at all those custom exceptions. So I'd say something like review the exceptions, or, examine the exceptions, audit the exceptions, delete, disable. I mean, sometimes you need exceptions. Verify. Yeah, verify all exceptions. That's smart. That's exactly right. And we would verify that, I would say, because we want to, ensure if they're necessary. So ensure if they're necessary. Aggressive policy approach, relaxed policy approach, system stability, user factory, baseline exceptions. Well, we know we're not using aggressive or relaxed because we talked about that here. We're using a managed update approach. We can knock these out. I think this one's probably it. Use factory baseline exceptions. You don't want to do that ever. So it's going to be system stability just by process of elimination. And that's an okay answer. Connections. We had some connections that were firewall is enabled, but not on all connections. Okay, so we do want to enable firewall on all connections. So enable firewall on all connections. This doesn't have anything to do with the firewall, does it? Okay. Delete connection types, disable connection types, enable all connect, enable private and domain, review all connection types, set permissions for connection types. Okay, so I guess this would be the same. We'd want to, verify the connections, just like we did with the custom exceptions. We're going to verify these. So verify all connections. Review all connections. Do we have anything else that says review? I mean, we're not going to delete connection types, disable connection types. What connections are we talking about here? Enable all connect. We don't want to enable all connections. Enable private and domain connections. I think we would review them. We'd start by reviewing them, because it didn't say that we looked at all the connections yet. And then the reason for that is to probably the same as this, like some sort of stability, proving the overall health of the system. So, stability, I'd say. Aggressive settings approach, we're not doing that. Relaxed settings approach, we're not doing that. We know that. We knock those out. Secures protections for all types. Possibly streamline connection settings. I mean, we're not streamlining. We're reviewing. We're verifying. So I don't think that's proper. Use default connection settings. We don't want to do that. So it's between these two. Secures protection for all types. I suppose that makes sense. But this is one of those answers where what are we really... We're given a piece of a sentence, and we have to kind of determine. It's like if you watch The Office, where Kevin decides he wants to start talking, small word, why make big word when small word do? And that's kind of what we do with these questions sometimes, because I'm sure the person writing the question had a very clear idea in their mind about what they were talking about, but we have to kind of figure that out. I think this is looking pretty good. I think the way to go about this question is do recommendations and then rationale, but I could be very wrong. But I think I got this one. I think this is all right. Anybody have any other thoughts on this? I think I'm ready to submit this, though. I do like this question. I think it's a good one. All right. I'm going to go ahead and try it. Okay. Pretty good. 15 out of 16. All right. Let's see what we missed here. Overall security risk. Okay. And what would that be? Disable using the registry. Okay. Well, let's just take a look. Upon review of the vulnerability scan, you first address issues with Windows Server Update Server, WSS, as the organization does not require update approval. Okay. Windows Update can take place via internet on a per machine basis. All right. And it does mention this. Users complain about sluggish server response, so removing this role from the server would free up resources. Using a group policy, you can then manage updates for all computers. This includes scheduling installation updates when the system may reboot. My thought was that The sluggishness was regarding, when the updates were being applied. This says that removing ISS would make the server speed, improve the server speed, which I guess it would. I don't know if that would be noticeable. You discover issues with user accounts. Only one administrator account is needed, with a recommendation this account is only in use when there is a requirement. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. For an organization this side, we wouldn't need multiple administrator accounts. Anonymous access is usually possible on a system that has IIS installed, so we did pick up on that. Something we had to infer. The unauthenticated anonymous access is in place for web browsing sites and IIS. Windows Update Server installs IIS. IIS likely exists on the server for that reason. Okay. So yeah, we would remove IIS and remove the account. Yeah, that was right. All right, good. Auto login allows a user account to log into the system without user intervention. For security purposes, disable this ability using the registry. So we would use the registry. That was very good. And where's the rationale? Without user intervention, for security purposes, disable this ability using the registry. I'm not seeing where it explains the rationale for that one, really. The everyone group. So we said overall security. This was an overall security risk, having auto login. Again, this is one of those where we're trying to interpret what they're saying. So I don't really see the explanation there. The everyone group allows access to a wide range of users. A strategy to remove the everyone group from an object and replace it with the authenticated users group. Okay, that was good. So it does, because we are replacing, it does remove the everyone group. Authenticated users are those that have provided a username and password. Now, just because it says replace, that doesn't necessarily, in my mind, mean that it tells us to remove this. But, according to the question, it does. So that's fine. The Windows firewall contains custom exclusions. It's possible that these are there for legitimate use. So verification of the exceptions should take place. Remove any unused or unknowns. So we would verify. Just basically verify these two. Windows provides connection types, public, private, and domain. A review of these types and the properties of each is important. Okay. I still don't get the rationale for security risk, but I think this was pretty good overall. Any questions on this one? This is a pretty good question, I think. If you do have any questions, and it's after this, let me know. Leave a comment or email info@cyberkrafttraining.com.